welcome back to Cuckoo for Books. My name is Salva and today I'm going to be sharing with you guys books that I thought were going to be really bad and turned out to be surprisingly good. This is the second part of my two-part video series that I said was gonna come one right after the other, and I think it's been about 2 months since I posted the first part. Part 1 of this series, which I'm gonna link right up there, was all about books that had such awesome potential and just did not deliver. And I promised a part 2, which is going to be this video, books that from the premise or maybe from the author or the plot line I thought was gonna be really bad and turned out really good. So my initial list for this video actually included a lot of books that I mentioned in my favorites of 2020 and my last quarterly wrap up of 2020, and I thought to myself, you do not need another video talking about these books. So I had to scrap all those books, although you can probably guess which ones they were, and add new books to this list. With some of these books I'm kind of diving way into the back catalog, but these are books that I feel were also not really given much attention when they first came out, so maybe you'll find your next read in this list. We shall see. So right off the top of my list is a book I hate talking about on this channel, and I will tell you exactly why in just a second, but it is The Dead Girls of Hysteria Hall by Katie Allender. I hate mentioning this video on my channel. I did a book review of this years ago, and for some reason it's one of my most highly viewed videos, and the insecure, self-doubting person in my little brain thinks it's because during the entire video I talked like I usually do with what I think is like very false confidence, if I'm being honest. But I had like lipstick smeared all over my teeth at the time, and then by the time I edited it I was like, well, you know, it's a waste to scrap good footage just because I have lipstick on my teeth, so I'm gonna go ahead and publish it. Rookie move, because up until now, it's been I think 5 years since I've done a review of this, I still will sometimes get notifications like somebody commented, you have lipstick on your teeth. I'm like, yes, I know I have lipstick on my teeth. It's quite obvious for anyone watching that video. But anyway, from the cover itself, it really looks like a hokey, cheesy horror story. There isn't anything I really like about this cover, and the only reason I bought it was because I adore the author Katie Allender. At that point, I think she had published around 2 books that I'd really loved, and then with this one I was like, ooh, we're either gonna strike out or it's gonna be third time's the charm. I really love this book. I can still remember it even though it's been 5 years since I've read it. At the time it was a really unique jump into YA horror. If I had like a modern day or a contemporary thing to compare it to, I would compare it to The Haunting of Hill House, where it'll scare you and make you pee your pants. I don't know why that is always the metaphor I use. It's really scary, and at the same time there's such a warm heart at the core of this book. So the first season, Haunting of Hill House on Netflix, might be what I might compare it to, so if you're a fan of that show you might like this book. Until now it's still one of the best YA horror books I've yet to read. I honestly thought because of the cover that it would be really bad, or the sophomore slump, or I guess the junior slump would have hit, but you know what, this is actually my favorite book of hers. So the next 2 books kind of fall into the same category of spin-offs of a series usually suck, and that was the expectation that I had going into both of these books, and then they just kind of freaking blew me away. The first of which is Sarah J Maas's Tower of Dawn. It's part of her Throne of Glass series, and it's the first and only book in that series to not include the protagonist. I almost forgot that we don't refer to her by her real name because and it focuses primarily on Chaol Westfall and Arene Towers. It takes place in a completely different continent from the main series, and it's kind of that weird thing where it's a spin-off, but also you kind of need to read it to get to the final book in the series, so it's like a spin-off that jumps out and then jumps back in. And honestly, when this first was announced, I was like, I'm excited for a Chaol book and that we're getting it, but also at the same time there was that little voice in the back of my head saying like, money grab, and I was really hesitant to read this. In fact, I think I got this from like a bargain bazaar because I really had no plans to read this. So this is a hardcover newly published book, and I got it for 175 pesos. And then I thought, you know what, to heck with it, I guess I'll give it a read because I have to finish the series someday. I read it. Oh my goodness, I think Sarah J Maas being away from writing her main protagonists did her a world of good. I honestly think this is like one of top 3 books in the series, maybe my favorite. It's such a fresh take on the world she's already built. She might be one of those authors that actually benefit from having a lot of spin-offs versus just following one saga. You know, at the end of the day, who's to say, was this a money grab? I don't know. But I think she did put a lot of effort into world building because it was on, like I said, it was on a whole other continent, and I loved how it tied back to the main series, so it's not completely irrelevant as most spin-offs are. But yeah, this one really gave me hope that, okay, maybe I should give more novellas and more short stories and more spin-offs a chance. I say that like I don't buy every spin-off of every series I'm a fan of, but this book really proved like, hey, maybe it's not just a cash grab, maybe there is a story to be told there. The second novella that really surprised me by how effective a story it was, especially because it is quite short. It is The Evil Queen story in the Lunar Chronicles, Fairest by Marissa Meyer. At first glance, it's like, we really don't need to hear the Evil Queen story because we know she's evil. Nothing can justify the fact that she's evil and done evil things, so why do we need this? But I loved the story in this book. Do I think it's particularly relevant to the main story? Probably not. Can you read the main series without reading this? Unlike Tower of Dawn, yes you can. But I loved it. It's such a good villain origin story. While I don't particularly sympathize with the villain at the end, I could see how she got from point A to point villain. I still have not read Marissa Meyer's other Lunar Chronicles novella collection, but once I do, I will be sure to let you guys know what I think about it. The next book is also a victim of crappy cover, therefore I thought it was gonna be bad, and then, you know what, it's actually really good. And it is The Romanov Empress by C.W. Gortner. It's kind of hard to imagine that I have had anything but positive thoughts about this book because I will never ever shut up about how much I love this book, but I mean the cover's really crappy, guys. Like, it does evoke, like, I guess a fairy tale winter wonderland kind of thing, but it's also so cheesy and so photoshopped and just really bad. The only reason I bought it, not because I thought the author was good, but because it was a rare novel that covered Anastasia's grandma. And then, I kid you not, from the first paragraph, I was a goner. The author's words, the picture he painted of Imperial Russia, the voice of our protagonist, Dagmar or Minnie, I'm not gonna try to say her Russian name because I will fail. Literally, I'm just talking about this book and then I got distracted and then I'm opening the book and now I kind of want to read it again. If you want to hear me talk more about this book, I did a book review and I'll leave it up there. Not that I didn't talk enough on this video, but just in case you want to know more, I will leave it up there. The second to the last book that took me by surprise is Wolf by Ryan Grodin, and this one really surprised me because by the summary, it seemed really dumb. It's an alternate universe where Hitler wins the World War, and every year there's a motorcycle race from Germany to Japan. And I was like, how are you gonna make a motorcycle race fun? Like, okay, visually, sure, it's fun if we watched a movie, Mad Max, woo! Never watched Mad Max, I'm just assuming. How are you gonna make a motorcycle race last for 350 pages and make it fun? You can! And she did! I love the author's writing. I've always been meaning to read more of her books after this one. It really feels very fantasy writing, even though it's set in the real world. It kind of reminds me the world she's built, maybe because I'm watching it on Netflix now, but it's very reminiscent. I think if you like the world of The Legend of Korra, then I think you'll like this book. It's got the same sort of vibe to it. Win the race, kill Hitler, or die trying. Every time I use this book in a video, I always highlight that little part right there. And the final book that surprised me because I thought it was gonna be a huge stinker, and this may come as a surprise to some of you because of how much I love this series. What book is this? Why, it is My Plain Jane by Cynthia Han, Brody Ashton, and Jody Meadows. Yes, I thought this book was gonna be terrible. I think as a Tudor fan, I'm very possessive about people who try to take on Tudor era material without having the necessary historical background, and that's not me being a snob. I could go on and tell you about all the Tudor era like flops that YA has tried to do, so I am very possessive around that material. By the by, I've read all three authors in their solo books. Didn't really like any of them. It baffles me to this day how I could not like them as individual authors and love them when they work as a trio. So can you imagine back in 2016 or 2015, they announced that these three authors, none of whom I particularly liked, that they were gonna team up and write a book in Tudor England, my Tudor England, and that they were going to make it a comedy? Nope, nope, no. I remember it took me being bored in my dorm at school to buy this, and then I read it and I was like straight up laughing within the first chapter. Not laughing because it was bad, but laughing because they cracked me up so much. The rest, pun intended, as they say, is history. So this book for me is definitely my equivalent of enemies to lovers. I just thought this book was a fun one to end on because I went from literally thinking this was the worst idea for a book ever and ended up being the best. And that about does it for this week's video. You can follow me on my other bookish adventures on Twitter and Instagram. I'm both at Cuckoo for Books. Please subscribe and I will see you guys very soon. Bye guys!